In the bitter cold of January 1875, 21-year-old Rosa Estrada stood trembling at the foot of the weathered trading post, the sharp mountain air biting at her cheeks, a cruel contrast to the heat swelling in her chest. A shroud of snow cloaked the rugged landscape, each flake falling gently, almost mockingly, as if nature were unaware of the turmoil swirling within her. The morning light glinted off the frost, illuminating a crumbling relic of metal and wood. A rusty truck, its dilapidated frame a testament to her father Ramon's dreams long abandoned. "She's nothing but a burden," he had declared just days prior, his voice cutting through the silence of their home like a jagged knife. "Better to sell her off than let her waste away here like the rest of this cursed truck." The words sliced through her, sharp and unyielding, settling deep within her heart, a mark of shame she would carry like a branded scar. Rosa's breath quickened, her lungs drawing in the frigid air, and she swallowed hard against the rising tide of despair. The townspeople cast sidelong glances, their eyes filled with pity and judgment. They knew what was unfolding, her father's greed breaking societal norms, an unspoken truth scribbled across their faces, condemning her to a fate she could hardly fathom. Their whispers felt like stones thrown at her, each one adding weight to her desolation. Standing in the trading post, where barrels overflowed with grain and fabrics lined the walls, she could hear the raucous laughter of men mingling with the scents of leather and firewood, a mix of earthy smells that suffocated her spirit. Rosa felt her resolve crumbling under the scrutiny of the gathered crowd, the heaviness of her father's decisions pinning her to the spot. She hadn't begun to comprehend the depths of her father's betrayal. All she knew was that she was a pawn in his diabolical game, exchanged for debts he had accumulated in foolishness and pride. Just then, as if summoned by her grief, a shadow began to move through the throng of people, a lone mountain man stepping forward from the crowd. Alejandro Vargas, with a presence that commanded attention, stood tall against the snowy backdrop. His weathered face, rugged like the mountains themselves, conveyed an enigmatic strength. As he advanced, Rosa felt a mix of fear and anger swirl within her. "You want me?" she spat, her voice trembling beneath the weight of her emotions. "I'm not a piece of property." But her protest fell like autumn leaves, unheeded and sinking into the frozen ground. Alejandro stepped closer, his eyes searching, and for a fleeting moment, she witnessed a flicker of understanding in his gaze, a kindness that felt foreign and terrifying. He reached out, maybe to touch her arm, maybe to offer comfort, and her heart raced not with hope, but with an instinctive urge to flee. The despair flooded in with abruptness, drowning her perception of self-worth as reality crashed down around her. She was nothing but an object in her father's eyes, bartered for a handful of coin. The cold metal of her father's consequences pressed into her heart. She felt nothing but the enormity of that moment as it held her captive at the precipice of surrender, paralyzed by the grim nature of her reality. A suffocating silence filled the space between them, and the townsfolk held their breath as if time itself had frozen. "Rosa," Alejandro said, his voice deep and steady, piercing through the haze of her turmoil. "You have strength." His words were both an invitation and a challenge, igniting something deep within her, a spark of rebellion that had long lain dormant, stifled by her father's expectations. She shook her head, disbelief mingling with the bitterness swelling in her throat. "Strength? What strength can I have when my own father has chosen to abandon me?" "That's not a decision that defines you," he replied, unwavering. "Only you can choose how to walk this path." His gaze was unyielding, penetrating her doubts like sunlight breaking through overcast skies. Rosa felt the mix of vulnerability and fierce determination rise within her, an internal struggle reflected in the tightening of her stomach, as if wrestling with the ghosts of her past. In that unforgiving moment, she was reminded of the multitude of slights suffered at the hands of her father, his cruel words and dismissive gestures that left scars deeper than flesh. Perhaps it was time to reclaim the narrative of her life before it was entirely rewritten by another. Behind them, the townspeople remained stagnant, their eyes fixed on the confrontation like moths to a flame, unable to avert their gaze from the scene unfurling before them. Rosa wondered what they saw as they witnessed her plight, a woman on the brink or a battered object ready for the taking. She felt the weight of their judgment settle heavily upon her, and the baleful silence spectating behind their eyes tore through her, clawing at the edges of her spirit. "Don't touch me!" she cried, recoiling at the proximity of Alejandro's grasp, lingering just inches away, a line she was too frightened to cross. As Alejandro took a step back, a heavy tension lingered in the air, granting her a brief reprieve and undeniably pushing her to test the heaviness of the unknown. "I don't mean to frighten you," he responded, softening his tone, and for a moment she believed him. "But I intend to help you." Each of his words settled in the spaces between them, and as he held her gaze, there was an intensity that compelled her to question everything she had ever known about strength, agency, and the worth she thought she had lost forever. She was not merely a barter chip. She was flesh and blood, bearing the weight of her family's failures, but still carrying the seeds of her own dreams, a garden waiting to be tended and nurtured. Something inside her began to shift. The mountains surrounding them whispered ancient stories of resilience, echoing back the tenacity she had buried. Perhaps she could find her voice amidst the cacophony of despair. Perhaps, instead of surrendering to the hatred she felt for her father, she could convert that energy into something potent and transformative. "I decide my worth," she declared, anchoring her thoughts as she stepped closer to Alejandro, asserting her presence. "You don't know me, and I refuse to be defined by my father's choices." A surge of defiance washed over her, emboldening her, even as the town watched with a breath held, each face a mere reflection of their own stories woven into one another. The cold steel of her father's decision pressed into the weight of her heart, yet the warmth radiating from Alejandro's unwavering support prompted a flicker of determination deep within. Alejandro held her gaze, his expression softening as if he was witnessing her metamorphosis in real time. "Good," he murmured, the corners of his mouth twitching into a subtle smile. "Your life is not dictated by anyone but yourself." And as she stood in that moment, uncertain yet fiercely held within the truth of his words, Rosa began to embrace the path ahead with all its uncertainties, shards of courage glimmering in the dark corners of her heart. She was not merely stepping into the unknown, but crawling closer to reclaim her own identity, armed with the knowledge that even in the darkest of woods, she could forge a different path. Rosa Estrada had decided to fight back, standing not just against the fear that threatened to anchor her, but also against the very boundaries her father had placed around her existence. With Alejandro beside her, she dared to envision a reality where she could rebuild herself, one day, one choice, one breath at a time. Hello, my dear friend. This is Jasper Ashwood, your narrator of Mountain Tales. Before we start, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below telling me where you're tuning in from. A big hug to you all, and I hope you enjoy the story. As wooden as her father was, Rosa felt a flicker of movement within her, the first ember of desire to reclaim her life. With Alejandro's presence, a man draped in shadows and grit, something in her body tensed, her survival instinct flaring, even as resignation seeped into her bones. In the stillness that enveloped them, she deciphered a subtle shift, an awakening ignited by Alejandro's unwavering support. He hadn't adventured here to claim her. He had come as a man offering a choice, a lifeline amidst the tumult of her shattered existence. She could feel the warmth of his gaze grasping at her unraveling courage. The crowd, once intimidating, transformed as the power of their shared truth began to resonate. She held her head high, deliberating her next steps with newfound resolve. Alejandro took a step away from the tension, gesturing for her to follow him toward the outside of the trading post. "Let's get away from this place," he said, his voice low but firm, guiding her toward the path leading into the vast, snow-capped mountains that loomed in the distance. Rosa hesitated, hesitating to fully trust the glimmer of hope that flickered in her heart. Thoughts of her father's betrayal clawed at her, threatening to rip the fragile new resolve from her grasp. "I don't know you," she protested, her voice wavering slightly as she fought the urge to retreat. "But I know you," Alejandro replied softly, his eyes glinting with a fierce intensity. "You deserve to explore the world beyond this. Stay close to me, and I promise you'll learn your worth." He paused, as if weighing the significance of his next words. "What I see in you is more profound than what you've been led to believe." With that, they began their trek together away from the trading post. The air was dense with the scent of cold earth and the faint aroma of pine trees, grounding her in the breathtaking beauty of their surroundings. Each step forward resonated with significance, the cracking of snow beneath their boots echoing the tremors in her heart. Shadows from the towering firs danced lightly, while the expansive sky spread above them, whispering of untold possibilities. A sense of freedom began to seep into Rosa's spirit as they navigated the wind-touched landscape. She felt her walls fissure, allowing cracks of light to filter through. The journey ahead was uncertain, but that uncertainty now fluttered with potential. "Where are you taking me?" she asked, curiosity peaking as they ventured into the secluded wilderness. "To my home," Alejandro answered, his voice steady, clearly navigating the path with purpose. He led her along the rocky trail, his figure casting a steady shadow as she stumbled forward, clutching her skirt to keep from tripping over the uneven ground. With every shared word through the crisp air came the soothing balm of understanding. It was the connection that stirred her heart and propelled her forward. What if I don't want to be a burden to you? Rosa's voice trembled, vulnerability warring within her against the remnants of her past. This is not about burden, this is about choice, Alejandro replied, glancing back at her, his amber eyes burning bright like a beacon against the oncoming dusk. You're not your father's decision. You are so much more. You are capable of so many things. They walked in silence for a while, each step further distancing her from her former life, one marred by her father's search for wealth at her expense. Nature surrounded them with its beauty, and for the first time, she felt herself growing curious about what lay ahead. As they approached Alejandro's cabin, a humble dwelling nestled among towering pines, anticipation clashed with anxiety in Rosa's chest. The cabin seemed to breathe in rhythm with the forest, its timber walls weathered yet sturdy, radiating warmth from the hearth within. It's not much, Alejandro said, observing her cautious gaze. But it's mine, built with my own hands. It's a sanctuary. Rosa stepped inside, the smell of wood smoke welcoming her as she crossed the threshold. A small fire crackled in the hearth, and the cabin's interior was filled with rustic charm. Hunting trophies adorned the walls alongside simple tools, and the handmade furniture held stories of quiet nights and relentless labor. She felt an almost palpable sense of safety envelop her. Make yourself comfortable, Alejandro offered, as he set about stirring a pot of something simmering over the fire. I need to prepare dinner, and I have plenty of work to do. You can help if you'd like, but you are free to rest. Feeling the urge to contribute, Rosa responded, I'd like to help. It was a simple statement, yet it felt empowering. She moved closer to the hearth, drawn by its warmth, and began to share in Alejandro's work. They worked side by side, a new rhythm forming between them as laughter occasionally broke the silence, transforming the space from merely a cabin to a home. In those early days, as the snow fell steadily outside, Rosa began to forge a bond with Alejandro that was different from anything she had known. He treated her as an equal, never once asserting dominance as her father had. Their discussions flowed from stories of hardship to dreams of the future, painting a shared vision upon a canvas of moment-to-moment connection. Tell me about your life out here in the mountains, Rosa inquired one evening, as they enjoyed a simple meal of stew, the flavors rich and hearty. Alejandro paused, breaking his habitual silence, as memories flickered across his face. It's solitude, he revealed, his brow furrowing slightly. But it is also a cleansing kind of isolation. Out here, the mountains are both my home and my teacher. They've shown me the importance of strength and humility. People are seldom kind to those they cannot understand. He paused, glancing towards the darkening window, as if recalling those past moments of heartache. I've lost much. Family, friends. So I learned not to rely on anyone but myself. Rosa observed him carefully, soaking in every word delivered between both vulnerability and strength. But don't you want companionship? She asked softly, their eyes locking as she felt the weight of his revelations. Alejandro appeared contemplative. Everyone desires connection. It's what makes us human, is it not? His gaze softened, and she felt an intimacy bloom within the warmth of their exchange. The days that followed evolved into familiar patterns. The cabin became a sanctuary, sheltering them from the harshness of the world outside. Rosa transformed daily, planting the seeds of newfound resilience as she ventured outside with Alejandro, gathering herbs, enduring the biting chill, and learning the art of survival. Under his watchful eye, she discovered skills she never knew she possessed, from crafting cordage to identifying edible plants. Each new ability blossomed a seed of confidence in her heart, cultivating that primal strength Alejandro had seen in her from day one. Yet doubts would sometimes creep back in, uninvited. One particularly cold morning, as they emerged into the stillness of a freshly fallen snow, Rosa couldn't shake the notion of returning to her father's fold. What if my father comes looking for me? She questioned, her voice barely breaking through the morning silence. What if he demands I return? Alejandro turned to meet her gaze, the steely resolve in his voice cutting through her doubt. He cannot own you, Rosa. No man can take what is your birthright, he said, the conviction resonating in his steady stance. As winter wore on, the bond between them deepened, infusing their days with a mixture of hard-earned labor and laughter. They faced the wilderness together, sharing moments of triumph over adversity. Yet each evening, as shadows enveloped the cabin, difficulties came creeping back, a wrestling match of regained strength and resurfacing fear. Still, with Alejandro's unwavering presence strengthening her resolve, Rosa began to realize every struggle only brought her closer to truly embracing her worth. Yet she understood the world beyond the cabin was poised to challenge her newfound spirit. And with Alejandro beside her, she had begun to carve an identity forged from survival, one choice at a time. A road that required not just the strength of body, but of heart. Together they faced the trials set before them, linked by a shared journey. When snow decided to melt into flowing rivers, they ventured further into the valleys, both bearing a longing for healing amidst the quiet beauty of the mountains. Those hills held an old magic, somehow awakening a hidden fire within Rosa, and soon, whispers of her past, her father's betrayal, and the burdensome weight of expectation began to drown in the symphony of life surrounding her. But unknown to both Rosa and Alejandro, the past stubbornly lingered, casting a shadow over their fragile newfound happiness, as the real world showed its sharpness like a glinting blade drawn from the darkness. Little did Rosa realize the confrontation that awaited her, a horrific reckoning demanding her strength, one that would force her to stand at the crossroads between the life she had fought to escape and the love that beckoned from the horizon. As spring unfurled its gentle embrace across the mountains, the landscape transformed into a vibrant tapestry of wildflowers and awakening life. Rosa Estrada stood at the window of Alejandro's cabin, her breath fogging the glass as she gazed out at the world blossoming around her. For the first time in years, she felt a fluttering sense of hope blossom in her chest, a quiet thrill at the thought of new beginnings, of freedom unwrapped like a delicate flower savoring its first taste of sunlight. "It is beautiful, isn't it?" Alejandro said, breaking the silence as he entered the room carrying an armful of fresh-cut wood for the fire. He paused, studying her expression. Nature has a way of healing what is broken. Turning from the window, Rosa shook off her reverie. "It is," she replied, her voice tinged with awe. "But where do I fit in? I am just a girl lost among all this beauty." Alejandro set the wood down and approached her, the weight of his presence comforting. "You are not merely lost, you are learning." He smiled gently, the warmth in his blue eyes igniting embers of courage in her heart. "You've begun to carve a path in this world, Rosa. I see it every day in your work." A subtle flush warmed her cheeks, yet self-doubt lingered like a shadow over her. "It's easy to feel strong here, away from everything. Once I step out into the world?" "If you step out," Alejandro interrupted softly, "you can discover your worth at your own pace. This journey is yours. Embrace it." His encouragement reinforced the fragile threads of confidence binding her spirit. With a deep breath, she resolved to face her fears head-on, fighting against the echoes of her father's dehumanizing words. As days ripened into weeks, the bond between them grew deeper amid laughter and shared toil. Every morning greeted Rosa with the sun cutting through the mist, its golden rays dancing over the landscape and bathing her in warmth. Each task she undertook, aided by Alejandro's patient guidance, fueled her sense of competence. They tended to the small garden, sowing seeds for vegetables that would bloom into sustenance later in the summer. "I never thought I'd reclaim life like this," she admitted one day, kneeling in the earth, her fingers caked with soil as she planted a row of beans. "I forgot what it felt like to get my hands dirty with something worthwhile." Alejandro knelt beside her, sharing in the labor, planting seeds of encouragement just as diligently. "You've grown a lot, Rosa. It's a journey, not a race. Each experience shapes who you become." Their daily routines intertwined like branches of the same tree. They spent afternoons scouting the surrounding woods, Alejandro teaching Rosa the art of tracking and identifying wildlife. Together they explored hidden trails and had their share of wild berries. These adventures fostered a sense of camaraderie, a silently shared understanding that transcended words. "Have you ever thought about writing about all this?" Alejandro asked one evening as they sat by the fire, the flames crackling softly, casting flickering shadows on their faces. "Your journey, your story." The question caught her off guard. "Writing? I've never thought I'd have a story worth telling," she admitted, the weight of his suggestion laced with doubt. "Everyone has a story," he stated, the conviction strong in his voice. Your experiences shape your perspective, Rosa. You might inspire others who feel trapped in their own lives. She contemplated his words, the idea of sharing her truth stirring the once dormant writer within her. As spring hinted at the arrival of summer, an energy pulsed through the air, alive with possibilities and new beginnings. Within their secluded sanctuary, shared moments began to transform into a quiet intimacy. Days melted into laughter, and stolen glances turned into lingering touches, a brush of fingers here, an unexpected spark igniting in the spaces between them. Rosa could feel herself drawing closer to Alejandro, the mountain man who had become her refuge amidst the storms. One golden afternoon, while taking a break from their work, Rosa caught him watching her with an intensity that sent her pulse racing. "What is it?" she asked, a wry smile playing on her lips. "I just wonder at your strength, Rosa," he replied, his voice low yet clear. "You've come so far from when we first met. I see you growing every day." Her heart raced, a mix of pride and vulnerability swelling within her. "Thank you for believing in me. You've earned that belief through your actions," he responded, leaning closer. The warmth of the sun dappled over them, turning the cabin into a sanctuary of warmth and unwavering safety. But shadows still lingered, a persistent reminder of what awaited outside their retreat. One day, while gathering fresh herbs close to the cabin, Rosa spotted a figure in the distance. As the figure approached, her heart froze. The familiar face sent chills racing down her spine. "Rosa!" Her father's voice cut through the tranquil air like a knife. "There you are! I've been looking for you!" Desperation knotted in her stomach as she stepped back instinctively, bracing herself for the onslaught of confrontation. "What are you doing here?" she retorted, anger bubbling alongside fear. "Your mother's worried sick," he said, his false concern drifting like smoke. "You don't belong out here. You're not cut out for this life." "I'm not going back," she yelled, her voice steady despite the surge of emotions. The hurt surged within as she squared her shoulders against the man who had once controlled her fate. "I can take care of myself." "How can you be so naive?" he countered with condescension, a mocking smile on his lips. "Do you think this is a place for a girl like you? You'll suffer in the harshness until you beg to return." Just as she was about to respond, Alejandro entered the clearing, his imposing figure radiating strength and protection. "She's not going anywhere with you," he asserted, his voice unwavering. Rosa felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude as Alejandro stood firmly between her and her father. "What are you doing with this riffraff?" her father sneered, contempt in his tone. "You're wasting your life. Isn't that what you've done?" Rosa spat back, feeling the power of her convictions rise. "You chose money over family. I won't inherit your choices or your bitterness." The confrontation set off a storm of emotions, fear and anger intertwining. Her father's face twisted in rage, yet Rosa felt safe, supported by the steadfast figure standing beside her. "This life is mine to lead. You have no claim over me anymore." Her father's expression shifted from disbelief to frustration, and for a fleeting moment, she could almost taste victory. "You will regret this," he declared, his voice a low growl. "I won't let you ruin yourself here." With that, he turned and stormed away, leaving Rosa trembling, not just with fear, but with an unexpected rush of liberation. Breathless, she realized that she had claimed a moment of power. The confrontation had become a testament to her emerging strength. Alejandro remained silent beside her, their breaths synchronizing in the aftermath. "Thank you for standing with me," Rosa murmured, astonished by the surge of gratitude. He turned to her, a proud smile crossing his features. "You've always had that strength, Rosa. You're just beginning to see it." In the days that followed, the air felt lighter, the threat of her father's expectations dimming like the fading light of dusk. That confrontation had ushered in clarity. She was becoming the architect of her own fate, no longer a pawn in another's game. As summer arrived, the landscape flourished around them, the vibrant blossoms mirroring Rosa's awakening spirit. Together they toiled in the garden, harvesting the fruits of their labor and embracing a life filled with joy and newfound purpose. "Do you think I'll ever find a place where I truly belong?" she asked one evening, as they sat in the garden surrounded by blooming flowers and lush greenery. "You are already home here," Alejandro responded, his gentle voice steady. "Your home lies in the choices you make and the people you surround yourself with." Their evenings transformed into rituals filled with storytelling, laughter, and shared dreams. As firelight flickered against their skin, Rosa poured her heart into her writing, weaving tales of love and resilience, her thoughts spilling onto the pages, building a narrative that reclaimed her past. "I think it's time I write my story," she announced one evening, her voice brimming with determination. "About what?" Alejandro asked with curious eyes. "About how I escaped my father's prison and learned to embrace my own life," she said, the words falling with intention. "It'll reflect the journey I've taken and how I've grown." In the days that followed, she dived into her writing, recounting her fears alongside her triumphs, the laughter they shared, and the beauty that flourished around them. With every word, her spirit filled, and the reality of her newfound identity took root, nourishing her soul. However, the specter of her past lingered, haunting her thoughts in moments of solitude. One rainy day, wrapped in the cocoon of their home, she felt suffocated by the ghosts of her father's torment. The truth she fought against clamored for attention. "Rosa," Alejandro said gently, noticing her sudden shift in demeanor. "What troubles you?" "What if he comes back?" she whispered, the worry threading through her heart. "What if I can't defend myself again?" "Then you should remember that you are not alone," he said firmly. "You have me, and I will fight for your right to be who you are." His words calmed her racing heart, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the strength she possessed. As summer bloomed, Rosa found herself in a rhythm of nurturing life, both in her garden and within her heart. Each new blossom symbolized her growth. Every sunbeam that kissed her skin became an affirmation of her resilience. One evening they sat on the porch, bodies relaxed against the warm wood, the sky draping itself in deep hues of purple and gold. "What do you see for your future?" Alejandro asked quietly, watching the horizon as the sun set. "I see a life where I can be free, not just from my father, but from anyone who tries to define me," she smiled, knowing this empowering vision was a testament to her journey. "I want to help others find their strength, just as you've helped me." Alive in the moment, as shadows danced around them, Rosa realized that both danger and opportunity awaited just beyond the horizon of their lives. Whatever lay ahead, she felt fortified by the trust she had built with Alejandro. Together, they were crafting a future not dictated by others, but by their own choices. Each moment shared became a testament to resilience, and the foundation of a life reclaimed was ready to nurture a new story yet to unfold. As autumn settled across the mountains, the crisp air was laced with the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke, calling for introspection and reflection. Rosa woke each morning with the sun pouring golden warmth through the window, awakening a sense of gratitude for the life she had slowly begun to weave. Each day spent with Alejandro was a step towards freedom, a reminder of the strength rising from the ashes of her past. They worked together in the garden, harvesting the last of the vegetables. The physical exertion was a balm for Rosa's restless spirit. Digging her hands into the fertile earth pushed memories of her father's suffocating grip into the background. "Can you believe our garden has given so much this season?" she asked, her hands clasping a basket of freshly pulled carrots. Alejandro chuckled, glancing at the vibrant harvest. "I'd say it's a testament to your hard work. Plants respond wonderfully to love and care, much like us." His words stirred something profound within her, stirring old wounds that were only beginning to heal. "It's strange," she mused, her tone shifting from playful to contemplative. "I forget there was a time I didn't want to nurture anything, when I believed love was just a source of pain." He watched her, the sunlight tracing the planes of his face, a gentle curiosity glowing in his eyes. "And now? What do you believe?" "Now I see that nurturing does not always lead to loss. Sometimes it leads to growth," Rosa replied, a newfound certainty in her voice. Perhaps she could rewrite that narrative. As twilight fell, they gathered the fresh vegetables under the dimming glow of golden light. That evening, after a simple meal, they shared laughter over the day's bounty. "You know," she said, "if we keep this up, one day we might just start our own trading business. Rosa's Rustic Goods. What do you think?" A grin split Alejandro's face. "I think it'd be a hit. You have the charm and the skills." It was moments like these that tethered her to hope, to dreams of independence. Yet, as the shadows of the night crept into their haven, lingering worries clawed at the back of her mind. Each creak of the cabin seemed to echo her father's voice. "Rosa," Alejandro said, breaking the silence, his voice laced with concern. "What troubles you?" "Sometimes I still feel him creeping closer," she admitted, her heart heavy. I can't seem to shake the fear that he'll come to take me back. Then we'll be ready for him, Alejandro said firmly, his tone unwavering. We'll gather the others who know his tyranny. You're not going back to that life, not now. You've built too much to let fear reclaim you. His steadfastness was a shield against the creeping dread consuming her. You're right, she responded, finding strength in his conviction. I won't let him define me anymore. Days turned to weeks, punctuated by shared chores, laughter, and collaboration that further entwined their lives. Rosa reveled in the vibrant moments of connection, the simple joys birthed from working together, whether it was patching a roof or preparing food. Yet, amid those shared breaths of laughter, Rosa remained ever alert, vigilant against the shadows, skirting on the edges of their happiness. That evening, sitting side by side on the porch with the scent of pine wafting gently through the air, Rosa turned to Alejandro. Tell me more about your life before, she began, hesitant but curious to unveil the depths of his past in exchange for her own. With a thoughtful sigh, Alejandro leaned back, his expression contemplative. Before I came here, I was just a kid chasing the horizon, he started, his voice tinged with nostalgia. I was young, idealistic, convinced the world was full of opportunities. I thought I could conquer it all. What changed? She pressed gently, eyes locked onto his. The loss changed everything. It showed me that while dreams are beautiful, they can also fracture painfully. He paused, seemingly lost in his memories. But in a twisted way, it also gave me clarity. In the mountains, I discovered resilience within me that I never knew existed. Gradually, the pain became part of me, an anchor and a guide, shaping the man I am today. Rosa absorbed his every word, her heart aching with understanding. I can relate to that. My life before felt like a suffocating prison, a life masked in other people's expectations. No one is defined solely by their past, Alejandro assured, his voice rich with conviction. Your journey has brought you here, and sometimes, the very things that scar us can teach us invaluable lessons about strength and compassion. Rosa nodded slowly, recognizing the truth in his words. His ability to turn pain into purpose inspired something in her, a fierce hope that they could create something new together, one that embraced vulnerability while still nurturing strength. Thus, Rosa sought to cultivate life's lessons from her shared story, as they planned for a gathering of those affected by her father's abuses. The evening's air turned electric, filled with anticipation of how others might rally around them. Have you thought about who we should invite? She asked, enthusiasm lacing her tone. A few families come to mind, those who have also faced his wrath, Alejandro replied, his brow furrowing in contemplation. We'll need to ensure they understand our goals. We're not asking them to fight. We're creating a community, a support for one another. They spent the next few days crafting messages to reach out to those in their circle, expressing a need to come together. Each note they carefully penned resonated with purpose. In her heart, Rosa felt the synergy of shared stories rising like sap from trees. The day of the gathering arrived, a bright sun illuminating the mountains while an undercurrent of tension thrummed in Rosa's chest. Would they show? Would they believe in the possibility of a united front? As the time approached, familiar faces began to trickle in. Families who had felt the weight of her father's devastating cruelties. With each arrival, she felt a mixture of hope and anxiety swirl within her. Would they carry the same fire she felt ignite within herself? As the sun dipped low, casting a golden wash over their gathering space, Rosa stepped forward, her heart thudding loudly in her ears. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. It comforts me to see so many familiar faces united here today. We've all experienced the shadows cast by the impulses of one man. At the mention of her father, murmurs of agreement swept through the group, voices rising in strength as they resonated with her pain. Together, she continued, emboldened by their responding energy, we can unite to reclaim the lives that have been stolen from us. We carry stories worth sharing, stories of survival, resilience, and triumph over adversity. And together we can find strength to lessen the fear that has been instilled in us for too long. The assembled group listened intently, eyes shining with newfound resolve. A woman from the back spoke up. I have felt his cruelty too. My children have suffered at his hands. Another added, he thinks he can break us, but we are stronger together. He has taken enough from us. The chorus of agreement swelled, warmth flooding Rosa's heart as their resolve deepened. They began to discuss tactics, ways to protect one another and keep the community strong. Ideas flowed as individuals opened up, sharing personal tales of healing and chaos born from her father's actions. Amidst the empowering dialogue, Rosa felt a sense of purpose enveloping her. This gathering transformed into not just a support system, but a shield against their common enemy, one that would galvanize their strength and remind them of their worth. In that moment, standing side by side with Alejandro, she realized they were fighting not just for survival, but for the chance at a life unfettered by her father's shadow. As laughter and camaraderie filled the space, Rosa glanced at Alejandro, who wore a proud smile, echoing her own sentiments. She saw him not just as a protector, but as an equal warrior in this battle for freedom. Freedom from the past that had haunted her so relentlessly. The gathering stretched into the night, stories shared under the bright blanket of stars, a healing balm over once raw wounds. Rosa felt a sense of belonging wash over her, her intensity slowly shifting toward the vibrant hope that spread before them. Yet, even amidst the warmth, the gnarled tendrils of her father's past still hovered at the edges, a relentless storm threatening their fragile peace. They all had a long journey ahead. When morning dawned wrapped in quiet stillness, Rosa returned to Alejandro at their cabin, her heart filled with a sense of purpose. "Thank you," she said quietly, gazing into his unwavering eyes. "I couldn't have done this without you." "Together," he corrected gently. "We face whatever comes, as one." With every heartbeat felt a resurgence of strength. She may have been shaped by the weight of her past, but now she would stand undaunted against it, side by side with Alejandro, armed with a community brave enough to fight. And so they began to prepare. Each heartbeat, each word exchanged, breathed life into the unity they had cultivated. Rosa knew as she looked into the horizon there would be trials ahead, yet she stood resolute, ready to reclaim her narrative and confront whatever awaited just beyond the horizon. The days bled into one another, an autumn canvas painted in deep oranges and fading greens, each one steeped in a mix of preparation and anxiety. Rosa and Alejandro moved through the motions of their routine, but the atmosphere within the cabin was thick with unspoken worries. There was a tension that coiled tightly around their hearts, like a storm cloud looming on the horizon. Rosa spent her mornings training, practicing sharp movements as she wielded her knife with a determination that both surprised and thrilled her. Each strike of the blade against the log was infused with purpose. She was readying herself for the inevitable confrontation. Alejandro observed her, pride swelling in his chest as he marveled at her resilience. "You're becoming a fierce warrior," he said one afternoon, offering her a nod filled with respect. "I have to be," Rosa replied, her brow furrowed as she concentrated on her technique. "For whatever is coming." On the afternoon of the harvest festival, the air buzzed with activity as townsfolk gathered to celebrate the bounty of the season. The sweet aroma of baked goods, the kind that reminded Rosa of happier times, wafted through the crisp autumn air. Children's laughter mingled with the lively chatter of families coming together to share in the festivities. But the vibrancy felt hollow to Rosa. She felt the weight of her father's expectations looming ominously above her, a dark cloud casting shadows over the day. "What if he shows up here?" Rosa asked Alejandro, her voice barely above a whisper as people danced and celebrated around them. "We'll be ready for him," he assured, his hand resting on the small of her back, his support grounding her amidst the anxiety. "You are not alone in this, remember?" As their eyes scanned the festival, Rosa spotted familiar faces, families of those who had come to share their truths and unite against the shared terror of her father. Every friendly smile exchanged felt like a reaffirmation of the strength they now possessed as a community. It was more than just a gathering, it was a collective stand against the looming shadow of fear. As the sun descended and cast brilliant hues across the sky, Rosa felt the energy surge around them. "Tonight we celebrate," Alejandro declared, raising his voice to draw the attention of those nearby. The crowd settled, their eyes turning towards him, curiosity sparking anew. "Tonight is not only about harvest and food, but about the strength we found in one another," he continued. "Tonight we honor every voice that rose against oppression, against fear, and stood together for the future." Their gathering erupted into applause, followed by cheers that rippled through the chilly evening air. Rosa felt gratitude swell within her. The sense of unity was like a shield forged from shared pain and newfound hope. She found courage in the eyes of those who stood beside her, a reminder that she was no longer just a victim of circumstance. As the festivities twirled on, music and stories intertwined, weaving an intricate tapestry of resilience and community. But in the back of her mind, the echo of her father's threats lingered like an unwelcome guest, reminding her that this newfound peace was fragile. Hours later, as twilight settled over the landscape, the cheerful ambiance of the festival was pierced by a sudden rustle from the edge of the gathering. Rosa's heart raced, instinctively pulling Alejandro closer. "What was that?" she murmured, her voice barely stable. "Stay behind me," he whispered back, his posture shifting into one of readiness as he scanned the crowd. A figure emerged from the shadows, gaunt and imposing, none other than her father. The laughter and music faded into a chilling hush as eyes turned to the looming threat that now stood at the fringe of their shared celebration. "Rosa!" his voice boomed, laced with authority and twisted pride. "I've come to bring you home." Rosa felt her pulse quicken, dread and defiance coursed through her veins. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she called boldly, trying to project strength she barely felt. The air around them crackled with tension, like a thick fog before a storm. "Listen to reason, daughter," he bellowed, stepping further into the light. "You have no idea what you're doing. This foolishness will only lead to your downfall." Alejandro instinctively stepped in front of her, shielding her from the insidious threat. "She's built a life here, a life of her own. You have no right to claim her. What you think is freedom is just a delusion," her father sneered, confidence radiating off him as he squared his shoulders. "You can't escape who you are. You're mine." At that moment, a flicker of fear washed over Rosa, but she quickly stifled it with the power of collective strength. "I am not yours," she declared, her voice firm with conviction that surprised even herself. "I am my own person. I won't return to a life defined by your cruelty." The onlookers murmured among themselves, uncertainty creeping back into their eyes. Rosa's heart raced as she sensed hope and fear warring within her. Would allies stand steadfast, or would her father's ominous presence fracture their unity? "Gather yourselves, friends," Alejandro urged, looking around at the crowd. "We've faced darkness before and prevailed. This is just another test of our resolve." As he spoke, shoulders straightened within the crowd, bolstered by his words that echoed courage. Rosa joined him, standing beside Alejandro, hand clasping his firmly. Their united front illuminated the defiance against the oppressive shadow cast by her father. "Leave this place," Alejandro commanded, voice steely. "You have no power here, and we will not let you take her back." A low chuckle rumbled from her father. "Do you think this will end well for you all? I can make your lives unbearable." But even he had to sense the shift in energy, the mounting resistance fed by strength and fearlessness. "We'll never bow to you," Rosa spoke, drawing strength from the collective force surrounding her. "This community has risen above your lies. No more shall we live in fear." "Foolish girl," he spat, realization crossing his face. "You'll see the truth soon enough. This facade of safety won't last." As he turned to leave, Rosa felt his threat linger, the tension in the air taut and vibrating with unresolved conflict. With an overwhelming sense of determination, she knew they had to be prepared for whatever came next. The night wore on, but the festival energy was dimmed by the encounter. Yet in that darkness, Rosa felt their resilience glow bright, each individual committed to standing against her father's cruelty. "Let's head home," Alejandro suggested, and together they moved through the lingering crowd, connecting with allies whose eyes shone with unwavering strength. And though uncertainty still coiled within, Rosa felt a surge of purpose blossom within her, a resolute fire igniting her spirit. As they made their way back to the cabin, she turned to Alejandro, gratitude flooding her heart. "Thank you for standing with me." "Always," he replied, the weight of their shared resolve anchoring her. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." The words settled deep within Rosa, echoing like a harmony woven through her courage. They would not turn back. They would confront whatever awaited them with unyielding strength, a force united against the remnants of her past, storming their peaceful lives. The night held its breath, and as dawn approached on the horizon, the stage was set for the coming storm. Rosa, Alejandro, and their united community ready to reclaim their narrative against the looming threat. As dawn broke over the horizon, the first rays of sunlight poured into the cabin, illuminating the determination etched on Rosa's face. Today was the day when everything would change. The air was thick with anticipation as she prepared mentally, her heart pounding like thunder as she geared up for the confrontation she had long dreaded, yet secretly yearned for. "Are you ready?" Alejandro's calm voice pulled her from her thoughts, grounding her amidst the whirlwind of emotions. "I will be," Rosa replied, confidence brushing against the anxiety that gripped her. "We have to face him." The community members gathered outside the old barn on the town's edge, a crisp morning air filled with palpable energy. Families congregated, their faces etched with resolve and understanding. Each had their own history of suffering under the weight of her father's oppression. Together they were standing not just for Rosa, but for every voice that had been silenced. "Today is about more than just me," Rosa addressed the crowd, her heart stirred by the collective strength surrounding her. "Today, we reclaim our lives from fear. Let him see our strength." A round of applause erupted, echoing her sentiments and carrying her hope skyward. She shared a quick glance with Alejandro, who stood unwavering beside her, his pride evident. "Let's do this," he said, his tone ripe with encouragement. The community marched toward the town square, where her father had often held court, draping fear across their lives like a heavy blanket. With each determined step, Rosa felt the burdens she had carried begin to lift, replaced by an exhilarating power. Today was a day of reckoning. As they entered the square, her father ambled out from the shadows, a dark specter cloaked in arrogance. "Rosa!" he bellowed, his voice slicing through the crowd. "Have you come to your senses? This rebellion is foolish." Rosa clenched her jaw, refusing to be intimidated. "No, father, this isn't foolishness. This is our strength. We refuse to let your cruelty dictate our lives any longer." The crowd surged at her words, emboldened by her courage. "You think you can dismiss us?" Her voice rang out, clear and unwavering. "We stand together, and together we are strong." Her father recoiled slightly, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You're lost without me, weak." "If anything, you're the one who is lost," Rosa countered, anger igniting courage within her. "You've deprived us of our lives, our voices. You've cast shadows over our joys and our dreams. No more." The tension thickened as the onlookers leaned forward, captivated by the unfolding clash of wills. In that moment, every person gathered became part of Rosa's fierce conviction. She felt their belief in her, fueling her resolve as her father's bravado began to wane. "Do you truly think you can defy me?" he said, anger boiling over into desperation. "We can and we will," she shot back, a fire igniting in the pit of her stomach. "With every story told and every voice raised, we reclaim our truth." "Unite, friends," Alejandro called, lifting his arms to rally the crowd. "This is our moment to stand for one another." Cheers erupted, swelling around them like a roaring wave, lifting Rosa higher. She realized they had become a force of nature. There was no longer room for fear in her heart. Each cheer, each determined face, each hand joined together, drove the last tendrils of her past from her mind. "What you call safety is nothing but a cage," Rosa declared loudly, her voice shaking the very air around them. "No longer will we let you hold power over our lives." She could see the cracks forming in her father's arrogance, could feel the shift in energy amongst the crowd. The active community was a powerful antidote to the poison he had pushed into their lives. Enraged and cornered, her father shouted, "You think you're destined for greatness? You'll regret this day." But his voice lacked conviction now. Anger tinged with desperation seeped through his threats. "Leave this place, father," Rosa commanded, confidence pouring through her. "You have no power here. We are done with your manipulation." With a final glare that encompassed both fury and a dawning realization that control was slipping, her father turned and retreated into the shadows, leaving behind the remnants of fear that had haunted them for so long. As silence enveloped the square, the community erupted into cheers, a rapturous celebration of freedom that Rose had not thought possible. It resonated within her deeply, each cheer a declaration of victory over darkness. Rosa turned to Alejandro, her heart swelling. "Thank you for being by my side," she said, tears of joy glimmering in her eyes. "You believed in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself." "Always," he assured, their fingers intertwining tightly. "We are stronger together." Days passed into weeks, and the community flourished, stories shared and laughter woven throughout the square. Their life had blossomed bright in the wake of shadows, painting a new story crafted from resilience and hope. Rosa felt the heavy chains of her past shatter, her path illuminated into endless possibilities. Each member of their united community stood as a testament to the power of togetherness. As the sun set on a peaceful evening, Rosa leaned into Alejandro, gazing at the horizon where their dreams were shaped anew. They were no longer victims, They were powerful architects of their own destinies. In that moment, she knew that every wound could heal, and every scar would signify strength. The fight had forged them into warriors, and together they would continue to create a narrative of love, resilience, and triumph.